In an age of impersonal political campaigns, New Hampshire is one of the few places where people have a chance to meet the candidates as well as read about them. The New Hampshire Republican presidential primary is the start of the 1968 campaign trail. From the beginning, the candidate who really has been seen and heard by the people of New Hampshire is Richard Nixon.
How did you fellas come up?
You are about to accompany Richard Nixon on the first leg of his 1968 New Hampshire campaign. You'll be with the candidate, his family, and the Nixon staff. You'll hear what Richard Nixon had to say and what people said to him.
I heard all those tales about the necessities of woolies and everything.
How are you?
Are you
Long way
from
from
here?
Philadelphia.
Right. I'm glad to find some New Hampshire people finally. All right. Well, Arnold, how'd you get up here?
All right, as the other weather looks up here, she was
How are the Eagles going to do next year?
We're going to keep fighting.
Richard Nixon has talked about a new vision of America's future. He has said that 1968 is a time to begin that future, and the place to begin is in New Hampshire. On February 2nd, Richard Nixon held his first press conference of the 1968 presidential campaign in Manchester, New Hampshire.
Tell us why you feel that you can win now when you couldn't win in 60.
I have decided that I will test my ability to win and my ability to cope with the issues in the fires of the primaries and not just in the smoke-filled rooms of Miami.
The Nixon schedule for the next 3 days would include a reception, a dinner speech, and conversations with people about issues in public and on television.
In 1968, I'm looking to the future of this country, down to the end of the 20th century. In 1960, I necessarily had to think of the past, also of the future, but to think of the past and to defend it. And in 1968, as you gentlemen will hear in my speeches starting Saturday night, I'm going to be talking about America's future, my vision of that future, and what I think I can do with the years of experience I've had behind me.
We've got a candidate, he looks like a candidate, and I think he looked like a president.
What will this campaign have that previous campaigns haven't had? Any new things?
I think it will, as a matter of fact. I think it's preeminently going to have a view of the future and a vision which has been woefully lacking in the last few years. It's going to have a long look down the last third of the century to the year 2000, and I think this is important, and he thinks it's important because we're at now one of those critical turning periods when the decisions that are made in the next 8 years, the term of the next president, will very largely determine the whole sweep of this last third of the century, and just where we go and how we get there. And this is the kind of a choice that the public has got to make this year.
As we begin to meet you, we're just so delighted to be here and to find that you put on such a warm California day for us. And but so that you know who we are, I think you will know Pat, my wife, of course, and this is Julie, and this is Patricia. And we'll be delighted to meet all of you. We hope you can all stay so that we can greet you personally. Thank you very much.
Meet you. My sister Julie. Hi, nice to see you. Yeah, I'm from Vermont. Good. It's Patricia and
Hello,
Julie.
Julie and I went to camp in Vermont.
Oh, really? Where?
Hi, nice to see you.
Hello.
Very nice to see you.
You bet. And I love your pin.
Thank you. Hi,
Hello there. How are you?
Julie.
Thank you so much.
Hello.
Hello there. How are you?
Massachusetts.
I'm Helen
well,
Castle.
Yes.
turn to see you.
Well, you have a great governor down there and fine senators and a lot of those
Got a
people.
fine
right?
president
Yeah.
coming along.
Right. Thank you.
Mrs. Nixon, I'm Helen back in
Well.
Boston. You're not coming to Boston? I must be.
Well, we're going to come there sometime.
Good,
I
I
bet
hope
we
so.
are, and I'm glad you wore all your buttons. Bless you.
Glad you did.
Well,
That's great.
I think that's great. And this is Patricia. Happy to see you. Hello there.
It's the best so far. Yes, I think it's going extremely well. He's in good spirits, and I don't know. It looks like this room's pretty well filled, and then a couple of rooms out and back. I think it's going very well.
How many hands will he have to shake?
He'll have to shake all that are here, and he always does. He never leaves until after they've all been shaken. And he'll have to sign autographs for a while, so it'll take a few minutes.
What are you actually doing here for? Identifying people, or what are you doing?
No, I'm his personal aide, and I just help take care of him and help out wherever he wants me to.
If somebody comes up who's important, whose name he isn't sure of, do you tell him who he is? Or do you...
Yes, if I know the person. Many times we don't, but he'll remember. It's amazing. He remembers and recalls people from. One lady, for example, he had seen in '52 when he campaigned in New Hampshire, and he recognized her and mentioned what kind of day it was when they met last time. So
Must have knocked her out.
yeah, they're always surprised when he does that.
Tak, cheers. Thank you.
Nie
Yeah, you Polish? Polski? Jak ci Polski? Ah, hey, see? That's about the only Polish I know. And the word for friendship.
Saying he did it again. Some man came up and said, "I met you in '52," and he said, "Yes, we had our picture taken." The guy said, "Yes."
It seems to me to be a pretty magnificent turnout. I think I'd estimate at least we've had somewhere in the neighborhood of 600-700 go by already. And I would estimate that we probably have more than 3,000 before the afternoon is over.
Are these people all Republicans, or are they a mixture, or what do you think?
I couldn't say looking out here. You can't tell a Republican from a Democrat or an independent out here, but I would assume it's really just a good cross-section of the people of Manchester, frankly.
I was just wondering how many of these people you think are going to be are essentially sympathetic to Mr. Nixon. How many are kind of potential voters?
We don't know how many coming in, but we hope they all will be going out.
Oh, yes. I have complete faith in him. I think he's the man for us today. I think he'll do it this time.
Do you judge a man by his handshake?
No. By his past actions.
Al was very, very sincere, very warm, very nice. It was a pleasure.
I think he's a very well-rounded person. He is appealing more and more to the younger generation and to the more people, which is the most important part.
I feel anyone's better than Johnson. Yes, I think he's improved.
Come out, too.
There you are. There's 3. How's that? 1, 2, 3. That's 50 good. All right. How you doing? You a friend of Dave?
Friend of Nixon.
Ah!
All the way.
You tell me, is this fellow a good chairman up here? I'm trying to...
Darn good fellow in every way.
You really think so?
I really think so.
Yeah.
He's a good guy.
All right, good. Well, as a matter of fact, that's what we hear. We got a lot of people said, well, he's too young to be chairman. And I said, well, we need a fellow that's sort of a goer. Would you agree?
I will agree 100%, yes, sir.
Are you on his payroll?
No, I'm retired.
All right. You were in the service? Yeah.
In the First World War.
You were in the First World War. What, the big one? Right? That's
yes, right.
What division were you in?
The 73rd Division.
73rd Division.
Heavy artillery.
Heavy artillery. Oh, yeah, the big...
Battery B, 73rd artillery.
Yeah, those were the French 75s you used, weren't they?
We used the...
Or did you have another kind of a...
We trained on the naval guns.
Oh, the naval guns, right?
The big guns.
The Coast Artillery, sure.
I was in New Hampshire Coast Artillery. I
was
enlisted in the Hampshire National Guard.
Yeah. Well... Gee, you know, it's hard to realize we've had so many wars since then. We thought that was the end of the last one, and then we had World War II, and then we had Korea, and now we got Vietnam. Let's hope we can get rid of them, huh?
Let's do something.
Let's do something. Right. Good to see you.
Awful nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. What?
Richard Nixon's interest in people, what they think, what they do, and the questions they ask, are the basis of Nixon's television conversations.
You notice that in the television material that's been put together, an effort has been made to put Mr. Nixon in front of a panel of people. Now, he's never met these people before. He walks on cold. He's meeting them for the first time. The panels are heterogeneous. Some are Republicans, some are Democrats, some are independents. One panel is an agricultural group. Another panel is a youth group. Another panel is a business group.
Television is a vital political meeting place. To be successful, a candidate must use the medium, and use it well. Richard Nixon prefers informal, no-holds-barred discussions.
Hi, how are you? See you. Mr. Parker. Burler. How are you, Parker? Where are you from? What's the... Right here. Here.
Mr. Bohannon?
Yeah. I'm an Dairyman. Dairy, yes. Yeah, you still have a few cows.
We can find it to look at.
Yeah.
Mr. Atherton.
I heard they were, most of them were gone.
Yeah, that's poultry.
We've heard a lot about your surplus of fine products, but I believe in a short time there's going to be a shortage instead of a surplus.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. As a matter of fact, people shouldn't be screaming about the surplus. We should be thankful we got it, because as a matter of fact, too, that's another thing, we can make a far greater use of that surplus in our foreign policy, I think.
We can get money for it.
It's a great weapon for peace. We can use it effectively.
I have a rule about press conferences that some of my professionals on my staff don't agree with. I never plant questions. And I know that most people do. I say most. Many do. I'm not sure that most do. The reason I don't plant them, however, is that the answer then is contrived. Nobody's going to get away with a question where you say, now, I'd like to have this question asked. The other thing is this. I also have a feeling that, generally speaking, where the question is hard and strong and tough, not belligerent, but strong and tough, it gets a better answer. Always save me from what I call the easy questions, where somebody's trying to help me, because the average viewer or listener to that kind of a question says, that's a patsy. That's one of his friends.
Just to restate this question, why do you want to do this? It's such a man-killing thing, and you've already put in time. You've already served your country.
Well, that's a question that, believe me, has occurred to me, too. And it occurs to my family. I suppose that your wife and your children feel even more deeply about their father and husband being involved in a great battle than he himself does, because the man who's in the battle, he can fight back, can answer, whereas those on the sidelines have to suffer in silence. But on the other hand, the reason that I think perhaps motivates me more than anything else is very simply this. I feel that this is the period in the history of the United States in which what we do or fail to do can determine the future of peace and freedom for the balance of this century. We didn't ask for this, but it is a role that has been placed upon us because of the power that we have and the vacuum of power in Western Europe, which previously had this burden. I believe the dangers of World War III abroad, the dangers of civil war, approaching civil war in a very difficult sense at home, and other problems are greater than this country has ever had. But on the other hand, I believe that never in our nation's history have we had more capability to handle these problems. In other words, the forces that can bring peace and avoid war, the forces that can unite America and reconcile America and bring progress in our cities, are now stronger than they have ever been if they're just brought into play. What we need is leadership. Leadership that will take America's great harnessed power and unharness it and put it to work on the unfinished business at home and the unfinished business abroad. By the accident of where I have been, I've been a congressman, a senator, 8 years at the highest level as vice president, 7 years to travel around the world many, many times and to think about these problems. By reason of that experience, I have thought deeply and have reached some conclusions as to what we ought to do to keep the peace abroad and to restore peace at home. And I think that in the presidency, I would have an opportunity to put some of those conclusions into practice, and that's the reason why I've decided to seek the office.
There has been a lot of criticism of President Johnson, some of it justified, much of it petty and unjustified. There are those that don't like his accent, and there are those that don't like his style, and there are others that don't think he comes over too well on TV. I know how he feels. But my friends, the issue in 1968 is not the Johnson personality, but the Johnson policies. And I say whether you look at America's record abroad or at home, this is not a time to continue with Lyndon Johnson. It's time for new leadership under a Republican president and a Republican administration. It is time to begin. Lyndon Johnson says, let us continue for 4 more years. This is my answer. When the strongest nation in the world can be tied down for 4 years in a war against a fourth-rate military power in Vietnam with no end in sight, when the richest nation in the world cannot manage its own economy, when a nation with the greatest tradition of the rule of law is torn apart by lawlessness, when a nation which has been a symbol of equality of opportunity is torn apart by racial strife, when the President of the United States cannot travel at home or abroad without fear of a hostile demonstration, then I say it's time for new leadership in the United States of America.
Ideas are important to Richard Nixon. He seeks them from a variety of sources. His staff represents a wide range of interests, backgrounds, and beliefs. And they are all young.
Well, one of the great things about my staff is its youth. It's the youngest staff that a presidential candidate has ever had. Perhaps even younger than John Kennedy's staff when he ran for the presidency, although his also was a young staff. And this is good. It's good for me because it bridges the gap, the generation gap, although my daughters, 19 and 21, help to do that. They and their boyfriends that they bring home to dinner. But apart from that, we live in a young nation and in a young world. Half the people in the world right today were born after World War II. And I, who fought in that war and who was part of that generation, need to know what these people are thinking. We live in a world that's looking to the future rather than to the past. And so this young, vigorous, intelligent, exciting staff of mine keeps me involved in the problems of the future and also keeps me from turning too much to the past.
On February 5th, Richard Nixon left New Hampshire to address several thousand students at Wisconsin State University. Nixon would return to New Hampshire. But before he did, he would initiate his campaign in Wisconsin. The primary in that state is only 3 weeks after the New Hampshire primary. The demands of a national political campaign had begun.
Mrs. Nixon, just how do you feel starting out on another campaign? You've been on quite a few yourself, haven't you?
Yes, I have, but they're always exciting, and the one that started in New Hampshire couldn't have been more so. I think even the local people were surprised at the enthusiasm and the size of the crowds and the wonderful spirit of the people.
Well, now, these are very exhausting experiences. Do you have a couple of qualms in the back of your mind about having to face so many months of this?
No, actually, I've done it so many times that I don't, and also my heart is in it. I'm a willing volunteer, I might say.
Is there anything about this campaign that you already sense is different from other campaigns in the past?
Well, not yet. there is enthusiasm, there always has been, but I feel that there's even more. And also by the mail that we receive, I feel that way. I think people now want a man of experience, and they also want a man of principle who has, and I think that fits my husband.
You're in a campaign because you want to do something about the problems of the country and the problems of the world in which the country is involved.
But from your own personal point of view, is there a special joy in politics and campaigning that you find a deep personal satisfaction from, that goes beyond what you might be able to do for the country?
Say this, I wouldn't be doing it. I wouldn't be going through this unless I enjoyed doing it. I enjoy meeting people, discussing issues, fighting for my positions, arguing about them, refining them, debating them. Once in the battle, then there is nothing which quite equals the excitement of the battle.
Very nice to see you. Hey.
Thank you. And you're very beautiful. I can see why you're the queen.
And you're the, are you the queen of the Packers, too?
Oh, I sure hope so.
Quite warm day.
Especially in Green Bay in February.
Yeah. You know, after seeing that game on TV. Yes. Yeah, they told me to wear those long underwear. I can't stand them. They scratch me. But, good luck.
Oh, my goodness.
Which nobody can deny. Let's give a real cheer for Mr. Nixon.
Thank you for everything.
Dr. Dreyfus, all of the distinguished guests on the platform, and the distinguished members of the audience, it's a very great privilege and an honor for me to be here just prior to the Winter Carnival. I say prior to it. I'm afraid if I got here during the carnival, somebody would ask me to ski. I remember the first time I met Bob Hope in the year 1952, right after having been nominated for the vice presidency. And we were sitting together at a dinner, and the photographers came up and they said, look at each other. You know, that's how they wanted to get you in some silly pose. Those are the only ones they'll use, at least with me in them. Anyway, and so we finally turned to each other, and Bob Hope, with that wonderful humor of his, incidentally, he has writers, but he can think too. He said, you know, Senator, when we get our noses together, what a wonderful ad for Sun Valley. Just to set the record straight on skiing, I did try it once, but I'm not going to try it now. I have only one knee to give to my country. Now, let me come directly to the subjects of interest, and perhaps what I can do at the outset is to lay a framework, a frame of reference, so to speak, for the questions that I'm sure will follow. Yes, it is a difficult world, and you inherited it, and you didn't create it, and those of us who did create it made a lot of mistakes. But the exciting thing is you can change it. You have the power to change it. The world is changing. It's looking for change. The old isms no longer have their appeal. Communism, socialism, Marxism, yes, even what we call Americanism no longer has the magic appeal that it used to have. The world is looking for the new leadership and the new ideas. And what you do can change the world. And I say to you today,
as you go through your studies and as you look at the prospects of the draft and all the other things which I know hang over some of the men here, as well as the fears that perhaps some of the girls may have with regard to that matter, I can say to you, look at the other side. Never has a generation lived in a more exciting time or in a more exciting place than America. And now we're going to find out how exciting, because you're going to ask some very exciting questions. Thank you.
Mr. Vice President, I understand that yesterday...
No, Hubert's coming next week.
Sorry. I mean, former Vice President Nixon.
That's all right, sir.
I understand...
I've been called everything. It's all right.
Mr. Nixon, in describing the approach in this campaign, a lot has been said about a new Mr. Nixon. How do you feel about that?
Well, my wife says I've got less hair than I've had before. You know, the hairline goes back a bit here and there. And of course, I'm older. I'm 55, which is, of course, 7 years older than I was when I ran before in 1960. And of course, I'm more experienced. I know more. I won't make as many mistakes as I might have made had I been elected in 1960. Of course, others discover that I perhaps have a sense of humor, which I think I've always had, but perhaps people didn't see it. Others discover other things that they seem to find for the first time. Let me just answer it this way. Of course, I have changed, but also perhaps the people who are looking at me have changed also. They're looking for a new leadership in this country, and they're taking a fresh look at what I may have to offer. And I, of course, am presenting a new case that I was unable to present and did not present in 1960. To that extent, yes, I am new, but in another sense, I'm not. I'm really the most difficult man in the world when it comes to a so-called public relations firm. Nobody's going to package me. Nobody's going to make me put on an act for television. I'm not going to engage in any gimmicks or any stunts, wear any silly hats, do something for the purpose of getting a publicity picture or the rest. I am not an actor. I'm not a good actor. I'm just going to be myself. And so when people say to me that I've got to change myself, take lessons about how to stand, how to talk, how to act, look in the mirror, listen to my voice on radio, look at myself on television, the answer is I never have, and I'm not going to start now. If there is anything I do have to offer to the American people and to leadership as far as our view and our role in the world is concerned, it's the fact that I believe deeply in what I say and that I am myself, and I'm going to continue to play that role. If people looking at me say that's a new Nixon, then all that I can say is, well, maybe you didn't know the old Nixon.